Welcome to MBA Secrets. Today, we're very excited and glad to have Mike Godsoe with us, who is an executive MBA candidate at SMU, Cox School of Business. And just as a quick kind of intro note here, on March 2nd, so 2 days ago, this is being recorded on the 4th. Two days ago at, 9 p.m. at night, I got a request from a couple of different listeners who wanted to learn and hear about EMBAs. And so the next day at 11:03, I wrote these times down because I think this is so cool. 11:03 a.m. I find Mike. I message him at that time. 11:05 a.m. 2 minutes later, Mike responds, and 5 minutes after that, we're on the phone. So this tells me two things. First, MBA Secrets will deliver what you want to know. Okay, just ask. It's here for you. But way more importantly, number two is that Mike is the man. And so I'm excited to have Mike here with us today. We chatted for a while and he's got some awesome things to share. So with that, Mike, thank you again for being here. Please give us your background and share a little bit more. We're glad to have you.
Yeah. And man, Ryan, thanks for reaching out. And the timing of all of that might just show that I have some sort of phone addiction. From a background in sales, if the phone freaking goes off, I've got to be there, right? You have a similar background, but
right.
So my my background, right? I grew up in sort of rural Virginia in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Okay, and in that part of the country, moonshine, wildly popular. And it's not the stuff you get in stores. It's the real stuff.
The real deal.
And so, now I'm sitting here in North Dallas and, people are like, man, how do you go from hillbilly Appalachia to Dallas? That's quite the transition. And I'm like, tell me about it. And, I'm like, well, here I was, I'm bootlegging moonshine to Memphis. I miss an exit. I end up in Dallas. I'm out of gas and out of luck. And so I sell all my moonshine that I have and I get into enterprise software, which is where I've spent the majority of my career. Started out at RealPage here, headquartered in Dallas. Sold a lot of SaaS, predominantly to the business. Let me define that. So the business versus like the IT group, right? Sold a lot of fintech, revenue management, energy management. I've sold more things that are SaaS than things that I haven't sold, right? And typically on an enterprise level into the C-suite, and systems that are affecting the entire enterprise. I've also spent about 4 years in the defense industry, in startups in the defense industry, which was exactly where you thought my career path was going, right? So I spent some time in the defense industry, in startups, and I always have my hand in a startup somewhere, usually not mine, but I seem to attract entrepreneurs and small business people, and so I end up, helping them out here and there, and so that's my background. It's kind of these poles between like, big corporate enterprise deals and small mom and pops. And I typically have lived in those two poles my whole career.
That's awesome. Yeah, that SaaS to that defense is a natural kind of progression, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Yeah.
Every SaaS guy is trying to get in the defense industry and sell manufactured goods.
Well, that's so cool. So having a sales background, it's just a fact, sales guys typically make good money, right? And being in the startup world, that's very entrepreneurial. These are two kind of interesting pieces of your background that makes me interested to hear why you chose to do an MBA next, because you surely were, and are, you're obviously still working, or have your hand in startups, like you said. What made you want to make that leap to get an MBA?
So what you're saying is salespeople and entrepreneurs aren't the first ones signing up for MBA programs. Is that what you're getting at?
I think so. Yeah, I think
And
so.
if I had $1 for every time I got asked that question,
you and me both. Yeah, you and me both.
So this was my perspective. I was always really interested in going and getting an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, to your point, like I didn't have a ton of reason to go get an MBA when I'm in a sales career and doing pretty well, right? And it was actually in my time in startups when I'm sitting here with these guys, sitting with an entrepreneur, visionary dudes who are, really smart at a lot of things. And then they're looking at me because I'm the corporate guy. I'm the only corporate
Right.
guy in the room, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, Mike, how do we do this?" And I'm like, "Well, I need to make something up really quick.
Right.
Give me about 15 minutes on Google. I'll get you an answer to that question." And so I had these, from my view, I had these like glaring knowledge gaps in my approach to business strategy and problem solving. And I knew, because I'm part of startups, right? I'm like out there raising, trying to raise money.
Right.
And, every dude you talk to that you're begging for money from is an MBA, right?
Yeah.
Venture capital, private equity, half the angels you talk to, all MBA guys, right? Mm-hmm. And at first, like when I was on the startup side, it was a massive eye roll. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
You're sitting here on the phone, you're trying to build a company, right? You're building, this is the entrepreneur, right? They look at nothing and see something and then turn nothing into a reality.
Right.
It's freaking magical.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm running with those guys, and probably in my heart of hearts, I am one of those guys, maybe. And I'm sitting here in front of a finance, an MBA or master's in finance. This dude hasn't built anything, right? He was super smart, good at math, got into a firm, gets paid a ton of money, and he's telling me how to run a business.
Wow.
And it was an eye roll.
Yeah.
It was a massive eye roll. And in those startups, we started running into problems that I'm like, I need way more sophistication at solving these problems. And long story short, the two startups I was a part of got wound down, and for some different reasons. I go back into the corporate technology space. I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm looking back and I'm trying to reconcile some of these startup experiences, right? And I'm like, I need a more sophisticated approach to business. And then I think about all these MBAs that annoyed me. Like, I'm heckling these guys, right? Behind their back. We get off the phone with these guys after begging for money. I'm looking at the CEO. I'm like, this guy, this freaking venture capital guy doesn't know, how to build a thing, right?
Right.
Which was my perspective, which was incorrect.
Right. Right.
But that was my perspective. And so after these startups, I'm trying to reconcile some of these experiences, and I'm like, those MBA guys probably might have been onto something. They asked some really good questions.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so I decided, I'm here in Dallas, and so a lot of the MBAs that I ended up interfacing with were SMU guys. And so SMU has a really strong reputation in the finance community, especially in Dallas. And so I knew about SMU and those things. But yeah, I mean, the reason I went to get my MBA was I saw two paths of success here. I said, if I stay in enterprise software, I stay in enterprise sales, then getting an MBA will help me understand how to have better conversations with the CFOs and the
Right.
COOs and the CEOs that I'm selling to, right? Walking up to a CFO, talking about how, the price of your goods and services is a tax write-off. A lot of sales guys are like, man, we talk about tax strategy. That's not talking about tax strategy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was like, getting an MBA is going to help me communicate way better with the C-suite.
Mm-hmm.
If I end up in entrepreneurial endeavors, it's going to help me understand what the heck it is I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's a very disciplined, systematic approach to business that is very, very hard to replicate outside of an MBA. Not impossible, by the way, but very difficult to find an environment to replicate that sort of discipline and systematic methodology to business building.
Right.
And so that's what ultimately led me to wanting to go get an MBA.
Very, very cool. So you were saying, being there in Dallas, a lot of these MBA guys that you were associating with were SMU guys, right? So was that the biggest role that played into your decision to go there, or how did you make that choice to go to SMU?
Yeah, no, it wasn't actually. So I had a criteria. I was looking at, what I did is I narrowed down like 5 schools here in Texas that I wanted to go to, and I had this criteria. Number one, they had to have a strong brand and they had to have a strong network, at least in Texas. So that's number one. Number two, they had to have an executive program. Number three, there had to be a clear vision for the future of their MBA program and their executive MBA program. And number four, like the curriculum had to fit what my goals were. I wasn't trying to be per se a specialist, right? So executive MBA programs are really attractive because a lot of them are general management degrees.
Right.
And so, and different schools are good at different things. SMU is really, really strong in accounting and finance. And you definitely feel that when you're going through the executive program at SMU.
I wouldn't make it through then. That's that.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. And, I'll probably bring it up in our conversation at some point, but you'd be surprised how educated you can get in accounting and finance. In the, with the right people around you and the right professors, man. I sold, I had an undergrad in finance was one of the things I studied in undergrad. And so I had a little bit of a baseline. I sold a lot to CFOs. And so I had a good foundation there, but man, it helped. It helped me understand the words that were being used.
Right.
But man, an MBA accounting and finance is next level.
Yeah. Next
level. So long story short, I ended up picking SMU. I think what's obvious, I picked SMU. The SMU has a 100-year history in Dallas of developing good business leaders and entrepreneurs, right? That's the reputation. And that is what I was looking for. I wasn't trying to get into, a big management consulting firm. I didn't want to go work on Wall Street for an investment bank. Those weren't really my goals. What I wanted was, I want an MBA program that's going to make me a good leader and give me a great leadership perspective. And that is like SMU's niche, man.
Right.
SMU's awesome at turning out great leaders in the business space who are operating businesses. The network is really strong at SMU. And I've done this multiple times, if I shoot a note to an SMU Cox grad, I'm going to get a note. And I'm just like, hey, man, could I have a 15-minute conversation with you over the phone? We could be driving, commuting, whatever, back when we used to commute.
Yeah, you're right.
And every time they're like, yeah, would love to connect with you. And that's just, man, that's just powerful to have that network. One of the things that also became important to me, and this might just be like a maturity factor, because most of the people in this program are, I'm on the low end. I'm 10 years in my field, and I'm like on the low end of experience.
Wow.
Most of these people have, 15, plus years of experience, of in-field experience. And as I've developed in my career, something that's really important to me when I was looking for MBA programs was I want to know that this program has a reputation within the community for being a responsible and positive actor within the local community, within the state, et cetera.
Right.
SMU has that. SMU has a great relationship with the city of Dallas, and they do like, the really big-hearted people at SMU
Right.
that I've met. I haven't met everybody up there, right?
Sure.
But a lot of the SMU community is big-hearted people who, they have a positive reputation in Dallas. And I think that's what you want out of your business school, right? Like if they show up in the news, you want your business school showing up in the news for like what they're doing to help the community and what they're doing to help small businesses, what they're doing to help economically depressed areas in the city, right? Those are the things you want to see your business program showing up in the news for.
Right.
You don't want to turn on the news one day, right? And it's like, your school shows up and it's like, the president of this school said he doesn't believe in COVID. And it's like, geez. Like, man, interviewing is hard enough. Like, you don't want the person on the other side of the table being like, man, is this person a wackadoodle? Like the president of their school?
Right.
Like, is that, and so that's SMU having that reputation in the Dallas community is something that's really important. And it went into, when I was weighing business schools, that definitely went into it.
I love it. Yeah, SMU definitely has that incredible reputation, and then I would be very proud to be a part of that school myself. So now you're in, right? You graduate this year, right?
Yeah, I have 4 class weekends left.
Oh, crazy! I'll bet that feels bittersweet, but maybe more sweet. Getting through that program.
Man, it's bittersweet. The rest of my program is right here
on one page.
There's all my assignments,
man,
for the rest of the program.
Well, congratulations.
This used to be 1 week of work.
Oh, goodness. Oh, that's amazing. Well,
now it's about 2 months, so it gets better.
That's amazing. So first of all, big congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. But now you've been through this program, and you have a very I think, important perspective that you can share with people. And so you are an executive MBA student. This show has typically been geared towards full-time MBA students. So how have you seen or found the EMBA program to be different from a full-time MBA? And kind of an add-on to that, in our conversation on the phone yesterday, you were talking a little bit about how the EMBA program, you can either be treated as a product or as a customer. And I found that very fascinating. So would love to hear more about that as well.
Yeah. So starting with the kind of the profile of student and some of the different dynamics between an executive program and a full-time program. And then we'll talk about, customer versus product.
Right.
So like, when you look at an executive program, it is a really weird entity among higher education, right? Like starting with the student profile, for example, there's really no other place in higher education where a PhD walks into a class full of their students who are making 6 and 7 figures and have exactly zero issue arguing with a PhD.
Yeah.
And that happens every day in an executive program.
Wow.
And so, and then if somebody in an executive program is, in the middle of a term or going into a, and I've seen this, they're in a fall term or spring term or whatever, and they're just like, not getting what I'm looking for out of this, out.
Right.
They'll go, and then they'll have great careers.
Right. They already have had, right?
And so the relationship that the professors have with students it's just unique, because the student in an executive MBA program has dramatically more leverage than the student in a full-time and possibly a professional program. And I think that SMU does a great job of putting the right PhDs in class for the executive program. Because you have people like, so these are PhDs, they're subject matter experts, right? Couple of my professors, Dr. Marcy Armstrong and Dr. Don Vanderwall, thought leaders in their space, so not just PhDs, but also thought leaders in their space, right? And then there's like some heckler in the back that's like looking at their research and looking at their models and it's like, that's not how that works. I did a thing one time, not how it works in the real world, right? And it's like, what? Like,
right.
who is this guy? And so Emba professors just have to have like a different temperament,
right,
if they want to be effective in the education process. And I've never been a PhD, so I don't know, but I can't imagine that it's a particularly intuitive way to operate within a classroom when you're usually the subject matter expert and you have some guy that's been in business for 15 years and run a business or sold a business, or he works at Toyota or AT&T or wherever. And, and it's like, yeah, I don't think that's how that works.
Wow.
And is willing to sit there and have the discussion.
Oh my, that's amazing.
It's a different dynamic.
Right.
It's a different classroom dynamic. You also have like, family and career stuff with Embas. These are like material dynamics with family and career. So,
yeah,
again, Embas, most Embas are on the low end 10 years in practice, and most of them are closer to like 15 years, right? And they have significant others, and they have multiple kids, right? A lot of them. And they have usually a leadership role in their organization, right? Like, these are not people tapping out at 5:15 and saying, good job for staying late today, guys.
Right.
Right. These are people, I mean, they're working 50, 60 hours a week. And so adding an additional 10 to 20 hours of schoolwork a week is not a small thing. And then there's team meetings, right? Because MBAs, like we all know, an MBA, a lot of teamwork, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then you have team meetings on top of like all this casework that you have to do. And so, and what's hard, the hardest thing is balancing family, because your company can fire you for underperformance. Your MBA program can fail you for underperformance. Your significant other is going to have a hard time firing you. Like, I mean, they can, but it's just a little more complicated.
Right.
And so it's a real conversation every Emba has to have with their significant other, especially if they have kids. And so like when I was getting into the process of the program and really serious about getting into an executive program, which had a lot to do with my daughter being born. My wife and I got married. We had a honeymoon baby, which wasn't really like planned. That wasn't a strategic initiative, as you would say in business school.
Right.
And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, well, I mean, I've wanted to get an MBA, and like, it's not getting easier from here.
Right.
I'm not going to get more time. Right. And so, I'm that's when I started, looking for MBAs. And I told my wife, Hannah, I said, Hannah, if I do this program, our family is going to really be strained for 21 months. But at the end of 21 months, we're going to get access to opportunities for the next 30 plus years, right? And, look, when somebody says delayed gratification, like I perk up like they said it my name, right? I'm like, I'm here.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
And so, and my wife, very similar, like both of us come from, sort of, rural areas, rural parts of the country where there isn't a lot of economic opportunity, right? And so now we're here in McKinney, Texas, right? It's a nice suburb of North Dallas. It's freaking hard to get here, man.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're constantly making sacrifices to move the ball forward, towards our personal goals for our family. And so the MBA for us was part of that. And my wife, she supported it. And I'm not going to tell you like it was easy. Fall term of year one, man, that's your transition period. And, and it was a transition period.
Right.
And,
aptly named.
And, I'm incredibly blessed because my wife, stuck with it. Like there's three options in an MBA program. Is in an executive program, when you have a family and all this, you find alignment with your significant other, you get divorced, or you leave the program.
Wow.
And all three of those things are viable options.
Right.
So, the family dynamic is massive. I think another thing could be, and I haven't spent a lot of time because of COVID, I haven't spent a lot of time around SMU's full-time and professional programs candidates. I interfaced with some of them pre-COVID, and I think that a difference, and this is more of an intuitive opinion, if you will. So don't take this to the bank and cash it, right? But I think good MBA programs, right? They're looking for a different profile of person. And so I think that creates way more diversity of thought and experience within the program, right? At least that's the goal. Right. So like everyone in my cohort, wildly interesting people. There's people who are immigrants and they've immigrated to the United States from Africa and India and Pakistan and South America, right? We have people who fought in wars. We have, preachers who left the cloth, found themselves in business, and now they're getting an MBA. One of my classmates, she started the program. She was the chief of staff for the CEO of a large telecom. And she just got promoted, so we're super pumped for her. And her undergrad was performing arts.
Wow.
Right. One of my other classmates is a psychiatrist. And so you just get you get way more breadth of background in an executive program. These aren't people. Most executive programs are not taking the GMAT.
Right.
And these aren't people that like, do you really want them to? Can you imagine? I have a classmate, senior VP of North America for a large financial institution. Are you going to sit him down at a desk for 3 hours and take the GMAT? Or like, what about my classmate who he started a fund to acquire dental practices? He taking the GMAT, right?
Right.
Or one of the dudes, he's a chief of product over at Toyota, right? Like, these people are going to tell you to go kick rocks,
And they should.
and they should, right?
Yeah.
They're, and so they're getting an MBA for different reasons. They're not getting an MBA to take a better shot at being successful.
Right.
They're already successful, And then a follow-up question: would they do well on the GMAT to begin with?
Right.
And I don't know, like, maybe, but I bet it would also create a barrier for some really interesting people who would otherwise do really well in the program.
Yep.
And I really, I applaud SMU. It's pretty forward thinking when it comes to those sorts of tests. I think because what higher education is finding is that those tests are creating barriers for people who would have otherwise been very successful in the program.
Yes. Yeah.
Might not know how to calculate the radius of a circle.
Yeah, exactly.
But, and hey, look, I've been in business for a long time. Not as long as, I'm a young guy, but long enough. I've never had to calculate the radius of a circle in my career. Maybe it'll come up.
maybe. But I doubt it.
We need to have the thing I love about executive programs is that you just get people they're all smart people. They have great experiences. They have wildly, varied backgrounds. And it just makes the whole process way more interesting. Now, to your point about, our conversation about customers versus product. In higher education, the line of thought for a long time has been students are products of the institution. And so when you go through a business program, you are a product, the institution helps you get into a company, and you function as their product within the company, and that's how things work. There's another line of thought that's coming in that says, hey, and the real friction, this is a massive point of friction in like an executive program in the COVID era, where you're dealing with senior leaders who are also leading their companies in the middle of COVID. And they're trying to figure out how to engage their customers and help their customers while preserving value for the firm, and they're trying to align, all of those interests. And so they come to an academic institution with those inherent ways of thinking. And so they're like, okay, I'm paying 6 figures to this organization. I don't have to be here. I can leave whenever I want. I am a customer.
Absolutely.
And a lot of guys in higher education would say, well, no, you're a product. And here's where that starts really mattering. And so before, like pre-COVID, that sort of philosophical disagreement, you don't really see it. And it doesn't really matter. The academics can think what they want. Business people can think what they want. We hand out diplomas and everyone's out. Have a great day.
Right.
But then COVID happens and it disrupts everything. And so you have executive MBAs and students. I mean, this is not an executive MBA problem. This is a student problem. That's why you see all these students trying to sue their schools,
right? Which
is kind of like cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Right.
But they didn't ask me. They didn't invite me to the meeting. So, that's an opinion. And so you have this tension that used to be very philosophical, and now it's very practical. And, the students think that they're customers. The institution thinks that they're products, and you don't ask for your product's opinion
right
when you're placing it within whatever it's supposed to do. but you do ask for your customers' opinions, and you alter your business models according to the opinions of your customers. Because if you don't, you go out of business.
Yeah.
And so there's this tension, and it's so similar to the stakeholder versus shareholder tensions that you see within the corporate space.
Right.
Are stakeholders the most important? Are shareholders the most important? Right. And then there's this whole layer of the legal aspects of that and what the actual law says regarding those things. And so, I mean, anybody that's considering, an MBA program, especially if you're considering an executive program, it's just worth knowing that tension is there. Right. And it is a tension. Like, it's not like every, business administrator for a business school is like, no, they're all products. Right. It's a real tension within, but it's a tension that's always happened behind closed doors. And it wasn't until COVID disrupted everything that this philosophical tension made its way, and it's like slowly creeping out, because it's the only time people have really had to reconcile it. And then you have higher education that's feeling market pressures from companies like Udemy, who are going to treat you like a customer.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's just a lot going on, and it's really interesting to watch. And I think, at least, understanding that tension is there isn't going to change.
Right.
Isn't going to change the tension, but being able to contextualize it and identify they're not trying to screw me. They're just coming at this from a different philosophical place than where I come from it, and it's just really helpful when you are contextualizing that to think that way. And, and that just kind of adds, like, if you're an executive MBA, that most of your program's been in 2020, and right. You have that stuff going on. And I see, it happens with the class of, I'm the class of 21, and I can see some of those same tensions occurring in the class of 22. And so it kind of just adds to the dynamics you have to work through. And in every executive MBA program, right, there's kind of this uniqueness to the success factors that are going to move you through the program, right? It's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
Very smart people have left these programs, right? And if you don't start out smart, you have to get smart really fast.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The rejection rate, I imagine, this is an intuitive opinion. I imagine the rejection rate for Emba programs is probably a lot lower than you would expect out of full-time programs. And I would also bet the attrition rate is way higher.
Right.
Because a lot of Embas self-terminate.
Yeah.
After the first fall term. We lost somewhere, I don't know, around 10, 15% or whatever of our class between fall and spring year one. And it's not because the program sucks. This is a great program.
Absolutely.
Some of these people were smart enough to get in.
Yeah.
But not disciplined enough to stay in.
Amazing.
Right? At SMU, you don't graduate with a 299. 3.0 is bare minimum. And if you go screw up your entire fall term, that's hard to come back from.
Right.
And if you didn't have the discipline to come back from that, spring year one is going to eat you alive. Right. So that's one aspect. Smart people get in, but don't have the discipline to stay there. Another aspect is, sometimes, you think that your family situation can undergo the strain of the program, and it can't. And you have to decide, well, do I want to get divorced or do I want to get my MBA?
Right.
Or get my MBA through this program. There's a lot of ways you could do it. And so there's just all of these dynamics, and all of that, we've never talked about grades yet.
Yeah.
We're not talking about exams.
Unreal.
And so, you know, the executive MBA is just a weird creature within the realm of higher education. And, you know, hey, I don't want to be the administrator for an EMBA program. Like that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, it does.
You know, I am an Emba. You know, I mean, I don't want to deal with me in that context. Are you kidding me? That sounds like work. You know, so hats off to those guys who do that, because it's not an easy job.
Right.
You have a lot of misaligned like philosophies. You have students that are paying you a lot of money who believe they're customers. You have an administration above you who views them as products. And you're sitting here as the dean of, you know, a business school, and you're just like, dude, I'm just trying. You can't keep people happy. You can't. So yeah, I don't envy those guys. I don't envy them at all.
No, it's an absolutely fascinating perspective, and one that I hadn't thought about. And I don't think full-time MBA is really, I mean, to a degree, maybe that product customer, you know, tension exists, but certainly more so with the executive. Okay, but moving forward here, you've obviously done some awesome things, and you're just like you're like we've said before, you're the man, right? And so what would you tell someone who wants to follow that same path? Yeah, and I'm referring to academically and professionally, but also personally, you know, to be kind of on that same in that same realm as you.
Yeah, man. The longer I've been in this program, you know, you're asking a question like, hey, Mike, if you're talking to somebody that's as sadistic as you and signs up for voluntary brain surgery, what would you tell them? You know, and, you know, I think I hate cliches, and I think I'm probably going to use some, and I don't like myself for it, but here we go. You know, the first thing is like, be where you are. I know a lot of my classmates have the program calendar. I have the program calendar printed out on my refrigerator, and every month that goes by, I mark it off.
Mm.
And so I'm sitting here and I have a countdown on there too, you know, and I start at 21 and it counts down to one. One is April, because that's when we turn in all our work. And then we graduate in May. And having sort of that big picture perspective, but then living in the moment and saying, all I have to do is get this case done, and then you finish it, and then you're like, all I have to do is get, you know, this accounting homework done, and you know, and really like be where you are. Don't get overwhelmed with, because if you look at the mountain of work that you have to do all at once, you're going to get buried.
Absolutely.
Right. So that would be probably like approach wise. Holistically, man, I would really just really encourage people, embrace, you're going to experience challenges. Mm-hmm. And so just embrace the suck. You know, don't be over here like complaining and crying about things you can't change. You know, your professors are going to give you stuff that you don't like, and they didn't invite you to the meeting. And so just, you know, cuss under your breath, do what you got to do, but get it done. Yeah. Get it squared away and get it over with. I think the most valuable thing that you can do in an MBA program is build relationships with your classmates, get to know their stories, get to know their goals and their aspirations, and find ways for you to be a giver, right? Create value for others, right? Tell a joke now and then.
Yeah.
Okay. We're all stressed out. You're not special. You know, be encouraging, right? Tell them that they're going to do great and to stick with it. This is a tough program. There's a lot of stuff. We were just talking about the dynamics that go into balancing a program like this, right? You know, be kind, have some empathy, help your classmates achieve their goals. be others focused, right? I mean, these are very basic things that are not difficult.
Right.
You don't have to have an IQ of 153 to recognize that everybody is having a hard time, and maybe be kind now and then, right? And like stop sitting there and waiting around for people to be like, you know what, hey, you're God's gift to the planet. You're God's gift to this program, right? No, like go find something beautiful in other people and tell them about it. You know, and I don't think there's enough of that in the world in general. And I, you know, I really believe that, especially like if you're an aspiring business leader, come on, man, like these are
right.
This is the cost of entry. You know what I mean? You can't like wait around and just expect people, because you're in an MBA and you're in grad school, you know, you walk in the door and they're going to bow at your feet. Like that's not going to happen. They're going to beat you up even more sometimes.
Right.
Right. Go to a sales floor with an MBA. All of those dudes think they're smarter than you, first of all.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's tough. It's tough. And I would say, you know, and for some of those reasons, I would, man, I really encourage, like, if you're in the veteran community and, you know, maybe you're towards the end of, you know, whatever career that you decided to have in the military, and you're considering going to business school and getting an MBA, freaking do it, man.
Amen.
I've been incredibly blessed to have been raised and surrounded my whole life by veterans. And so like, if you're sitting there thinking, man, you know, I don't know, business school, I don't have that background, right? You know, there's two dudes specifically in my program who through this whole COVID drama have really been a great voice of leadership to the whole cohort, right? And look, I haven't been in the defense industry for a while. Some things might have changed, but I don't think if you go to Coronado and you go look at the BUDS training, I don't think capital budgeting is part of it, right?
Safe assumption.
And I don't think when, you know, my Marine Corps, exactly. And when one of my classmates, Marine Corps helicopter pilot, right? I don't think at any point in his training, somebody walked up to him and was like, hey, let's talk about weighted average cost of capital, right? I don't think that's really a priority for the Marine Corps. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
okay?
I think you're right.
But let me tell you something. When black swan events occur, like when you're going through an MBA program and COVID walks up and kicks you in the teeth,
yeah,
I want dudes like that on the team, because every civilian is running around losing their mind because bad things are happening. And you have these crusty veterans over here cussing under their breath and figuring out a way to win. And I think when we're going to business schools, we're trying to figure out a way to win. So sitting in a business school, crying and moaning about all the things going wrong and all the people who are doing things that you don't like, I don't know that that's a great use of time. And I think there's a massive leadership vacuum in the business space right now, and really the world, but the business space specifically. And I think veterans can help us fill those vacuums in business. Like, we're desperate for it, man.
Yeah. Right?
Like, we are desperate for it. You know, and shoot, you know, civilians aren't always great at perspective. Mm-hmm. And this is me speaking as one. Yeah. I am 100% civilian. I never signed the line. I never stood on the yellow footprints. I was never on my way to the recruiter's office and got distracted for 20 years by a help wanted sign. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm this, and I think civilians struggle with perspective. And they get promoted into leadership positions and they're struggling with perspective. And I think veterans just have a way better perspective because they've done some things and they've seen some stuff and things in this world that that's tough. And so they come to business programs and they're like, they're getting through it. So look, if you're in the veteran community, come on.
Yes.
Come on. Find your local executive program and jump in.
Yeah.
Get a tutor for accounting and finance if you have to. You'll figure it out. But we need those guys. We are desperate in the business community for the veterans to come in and help fill leadership vacuums. We're freaking desperate for it, man.
I love that. And I couldn't agree more with you. I think that you nailed it right on the head, and amen to everything. We'll kind of wrap it up with this one. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how students or candidates can maximize their experience when they're in their program and going through the thick of it. And I mean, you've kind of touched on that with having a positive attitude and just getting it done. And I think that's probably the number one thing. But do you have any other thoughts on that in particular?
Yeah, I have a couple. Number one, I would say think strategically and take a long view of what you're trying to accomplish with your program, right? Things are going to happen that you don't like. People are going to do some things you don't like. Those people could be classmates or administrators or the federal government or Reddit, right. Whoever it is, You know what I mean? And so stay focused on what you're trying to accomplish and what your goals are, right? Everyone walks in with a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? One of my classmates during summer term, his house gets struck by lightning. His whole house burns to the ground.
Oh my gosh.
We're in the middle of the program.
Jeez.
This dude has a 3.9 GPA.
Unbelievable.
He's not only going through this executive program, but he's also doing a master's in finance at the same time.
Oh, geez.
And he's running he's running anesthesiology clinics.
Wow.
Or anesthesiology business. Right? And he has a 3.9. His house burned down. Oh, he doesn't have things.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
And the whole drama of that, this man gets 1 A-. Life doesn't stop because you're in grad school.
Yeah.
Right. So, look, take your punch in the mouth, wipe the blood off your face, embrace the suck, and find a way to win. And if you don't want to do that, there's plenty of people in this world that don't want to do that. And it doesn't make you a bad person if you don't, but you should save some money, stay at home, and be like every other heckler in this world. And just like maybe business leadership isn't for you.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Plenty of people, really successful people, are not business leaders and want to heckle in the stands, and that's fine. My last thought would be this. If you're an American citizen and you are going to an MBA in the States, you have won the freaking lottery.
Amen.
You know what I mean? People are dying every day just to get a shot, to get to the border, to maybe have an opportunity. Right? So don't walk around like you're some sort of victim with no future.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have an abundance of opportunity. There are companies lined up out the door and around the block to come get you and your talent. Right? So there's no reason you have all this abundance. There's no reason you shouldn't be a giver. Right? Don't give power to people and things that shouldn't have power in your life. You don't like something, you don't like the direction something's going, go change it.
Yeah.
Right? Go be a giver. Give something to your community instead of waiting for somebody to come tell you that you're pretty and smart. You know what I mean?
That'll never come to me, ever.
Hey, me either.
Yeah,
me either. I used to be a good-looking guy, and not anymore.
I agree with you, though.
But look, go be a light in the community. Go help a small business. Go pick up your classmate when they're having a borderline mental breakdown, right? Look, lose the attorney's phone number that you called up to sue your school.
Yeah.
Right? You start finding beautiful things about people and about life, and I promise you, and about your MBA program, and I promise you, guarantee it, overnight, your MBA experience will immediately improve. And look, if I'm wrong, find me on LinkedIn. I think my profile is public. Find me on LinkedIn, send me a note and saying, you know what, Mike, being a negative person works way better for me, results in way more success in my life. I'm gonna be I tried that positive, looking for the good in things, finding beautiful things about people. Didn't work for me. I have less friends today because of it.
Yeah.
If that happens to you, send me a message. I'll pay for your LinkedIn premium or whatever for the free message, right? Like, send me a message and tell me. I'd love to know. Sometimes being negative, I'll make a note, right? Sometimes being negative leads to more success. This is wild.
Mike, have you ever considered public speaking as a career, motivational speaking? Because I think you'd be good at it. I'm ready to break this door down right now. Just barrel through it. You know?
I'm all jacked up.
Yeah, I love it. This is great.
I did. And then I looked into it and I'm like, man, these people make no money.
Yeah.
How can I entertain and publicly speak and make money? Sales.
Yeah,
That's
there you
it.
go.
I'm in.
There you go. Perfect. Well, you are awesome. Thank you so much for your time. My quick takeaway out of this entire thing, which it's hard to pick any one thing, but just relieving tension through kindness and maybe some comedy, right?
Oh, you got to, man.
It's just
Dave
amazing.
Chappelle. Listen to look, if you're freaking out about exams, go turn on some Dave Chappelle. It's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you happier. It makes you happier when you make other people happy, right? That's it's not groundbreaking.
There's real, that's actually the science.
It's just science, and you know, it also pays dividends to you for your network, but that's not why you should do it. But just as a bonus, that does come. So that's my personal takeaway. Thank you so much again. Really appreciate having you on.
Hey, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.